Okay, welcome back to the 416th Knowledge Seekers Workshop here on Thursday, January 20th, 2022. Hello, Mr. Kesh. Are you ready to take questions here in this second part of the workshop? Or how would you like to?
Well, as usual, as we say, we are ready to rumble.
Ready to rumble. Well, we have a question that came up first in the YouTube from Salamia, who asks, coherence between the soul of man and the soul of physicality is the secret of balance and equilibrium. So how can we create it?
Create what? The equilibrium.
The coherence between the soul of man and the soul of physicality, which
partially is the emotion. Partially is the emotion of the man. Detachment and understanding it. This is this what you call coherence goes where we totally separate from a lot of things, because it's the responsibility of every man for himself at a point when whatever they don't know what to come back to, and don't leave part behind and add some part too. And is totality of the physicality that we have to understand. This is what I keep on going back to, that Keshe Foundation is not a religious group. Keshe Foundation is not a cult. Keshe Foundation is not another organization. It's a scientific, new science. You have to understand the science of it, how it happens. And you take from it according to your understanding of the knowledge. You don't need any PhDs or professor to understand it. If you get enlightened, if you understand the principle, it takes you a few seconds to understand most of the work. And then you can replicate it, and people say, oh, this is this you understanding the way you do, and the way you understood. I work with a knowledge seeker, has no education whatsoever. Just been to the ordinary 12th year. We've just been brought up in a farming family. But his knowledge of the plasma is beyond hundreds of professors to put together, because he understood the fundamental. Those who try to achieve it or to copy it, to replicate it, it will be very difficult. Because you have to be able to enjoy its existence, enjoy the knowledge you gained, and to be able to share it. And if you want to be able to replicate it, that others can enjoy it. And we see this right across the knowledge seekers. Each one of them in their own special fields, or they understood something and they knew something added up, are adding to the knowledge new things, new ways, new machinery, everything we see coming up. And they put it there is a conjunction of this technology and the Keshe Foundation. And that's the beauty of it. And they implement it. And they explain it. This is what it is from there, and this is part from there. It's the same. Connecting the soul and the technology and the knowledge together. And he can do it. Then it's being able to share and give and sort that out, which is part of the whole structure and the process. Any other question?
We have Ed here, hand up. I think he'll have a question. Go ahead, Ed.
Good morning, Mr. Cash. This is Ed from Indiana. In a way, you've kind of answered my question with your first explanation here, but I remember from the first time you introduced the GANs, Cup 1s and Cup 2s, my question at that time was how do we understand how to make a GANs of the proper strength to interact with a certain plasma strength? I remember when you used to work in your garage, you told us you used to just look at the lights in the dark because you understood the significance of what was happening with the light and the colors of the lights. And we don't have, like what you presented to us this morning, we don't have tools to operate at that level. And it seems to me the only tools we have are the fields of our understanding and perception. And so I guess my question is, what are the tools? How do we develop the tools to work at this level?
You don't need machinery, you don't need reactors. If you go back to one of the teachings, and many times, I said you can hold your hand and create the light. You, as a dynamic plasma system, we can do this. We can create it. We know how to access energies. We do it physically. We rub our hand to each other and we create heat. Now we can hold or position ourselves and create interaction of the plasma of the field of the man with his aura, you call it, and create the same. And see how, what would be the reaction of it, what would be the outcome of it. This is the part of understanding of the totality. And this is what we need to understand. We need to be able to put together with a simple understanding of the technology. You don't need to be a magician or to be a professor to create it. When you look at I'm going to go back to it. When you look at the picture which I put on earlier on, and if you understood the principle of what this picture means, when we expand, maybe it's another picture, when we understand the principle, does not matter what they give us. People in villages of Amazon will use the same system and they will reach the same by pots. They don't need nuclear reactors. Is understanding the technology or understanding the knowledge counts. When you look at this picture, in reality, there is no difference application of technology in the Iranian nuclear reactor, in the brain enhancement unit, or in the body enhancement unit. One creates a flight. One handles the body of the man in different strengths, and the other handles the emotion. And the tools of the knowledge is there. All the same in all three. Is application and implication. And if I stand the man in this gap, then what would be the difference? You got to realize how much you understand of the knowledge, how you explain the knowledge. And how you you interpret the knowledge and what that interpretation leads you to. And what you want to gain from it. And how much of it you can accept and you can add to. Then you don't need systems. I mentioned his, what we call the name of and the presence of Professor Leslie, the head of the nuclear department of Queen Mary College, as head of my department. And at that time, as I said many times, we were on the edge of the science in 70s and 80s, even though we were 40 days down the line of nuclear bomb. In the final year, and in the back end of the second year in teachings, there was no books written. The professors were sitting one-to-one across the table. That was the knowledge shared. We were reading of their own. They were teaching us of the research papers of their own, or the PhDs. We had some cases where the PhD was doing the research, comes in the teaching with the professor, sits across three of us, trying to explain the knowledge. And to me at that time, many times I had this interaction and what you call discussion with Professor Leslie, because he was a very bright man, he could understand the lack in the knowledge. I explained to him, why should I accept what, because you written, to be acceptable to me because it doesn't make sense to me. He said, I have no more to share. You know more than me. I'm learning from you most of the time than teaching you. And I said, these are the questions as scientists, as a human being, we have to answer. It just doesn't need to be a nuclear physicist. I remember once he said to me, I look forward to the days in the week when I teach you, because I become a student most of the time. We have to understand what is in our hand as a knowledge. And how do we apply it in the cases we want, the conditions we create? Because once you learn to walk, you can run, you can jump, you can dive, you can do anything. The limitation comes by how much you extend that part. You can run a few meters. You can train yourself to become a marathon runner. You can train yourself to become a jumper. Or you can use those legs to become a diver. It's the same with the knowledge. You have to understand how you want to extend it, how you want to train it, and how you understand it to benefit you or to give you the pleasure of the existence. You like to run marathon, that gives you pleasure. You want to be a diver, it gives you a pleasure. But it can be both, if you understood how to use your legs. And this is what we try to push the knowledge seekers to the next level of. Understanding the process, creating the condition. And this is what we as knowledge seekers expect, extend, and try to find out. We show the knowledge is for you to apply it according to what you understand of it, in extension of the knowledge you have, or the emotion you have, or your understanding you have. This is why the teachings are, even you call it about the soul teaching, the soul is the fundamental plasma. You put a name because you understand that way. To me, a soul is a neutron. How do I want it to interact? How do I want it to divide? How do I want it to be in the creation of physicality or soul out of physicality, because electron, and create the interaction of between the two, the atom, what we call the physicality of the man. I'm a man of science, and I understand the science of the creation. And with it, we can interpret it in the world of the theology, in the world of the plasma physics, in the world of matter state, or in any shape or form you want. I know how to walk. And I know how to walk the knowledge of the creation and the creator. That's all. And you can do the same. But you have to be able to, don't create dogmas, don't create limitation of, because I've been told this should be. Accept the knowledge and add to it the way what you think can be. Not what you've been told, and you're trying to frame the new knowledge in that frame you've been told. It's not a painting with a frame. It's a universe blank. It's you who paints it. And it has no frame. And it has no limitation in understanding of it. What do you do if you land on Mars and you see a new dimension? Let's go back and ask Mr. Keshe what it is. Or let's go and see what the others say, or you have enough knowledge to analyze it, understand it, react to it, and make the best of it. That's what all these teachings are. Always go back to what I told you. My uncle in Tel Aviv told me when I met him for the last time in the year 2000. He said, when one member of the family went to Moscow and came back in the early beginning of the last century, he said, the Russians have a metal bird, it flies. We all laughed at him, metal bird. A few years later, we saw the planes and what we call airports. Was it him being crazy, or was it our lack of understanding that the technology and knowledge has extended? We were blind to it. And this is what it is. The knowledge is there. Are you the man who's in Moscow? Are you the man ridiculing the man who already seen it? And you are one of those who will see it as you develop more of. And then do you rely on others to accept it, or what you've seen, you have decided, and you have created to the next condition? Openness is the key to understanding the creation. Dogmas and limitation to fit into the books you read is how you've been controlled by yourself and nobody else. You don't need nuclear reactors. When you look at this reactor here, next to it, you just see the shadow of another reactor. I hope I can find it. And I can share it with you. And it's very interesting. The reason this is interesting is the capability and the ability to make things according to what we have. And many times when I look at this, it makes me laugh, but it brings me different kind of joy to understand how, at the same time as being able to, you're limited by own what we call environment, your own conditions. When you, let me choose a couple of pictures, maybe I can explain it in a much deeper way. When you look at these, what we call reactors, you will understand what I'm talking about, because it's very fundamental. What we had, what we could have, and what happened to us. I try to get it in the best way possible. When you look at these reactors here, it's the same reactors. You see the flying reactor on the right side, the mother reactor in the middle, and then you see a metal reactor. I tried to go here, now you see the metal reactor next to the mother on the other side, plus its flying system. These metal reactors, for us to build, it took us nearly 1.5 years to build these two. The metal had to be brought in from South Korea and everything else. It took the Iranians 7 days because they had the facilities to build it in Sharif Tehran University, these two. That's a difference. And the difference between the two is about a year. When you have the facilities, you do it in a much faster way. And when you do it in other ways, you just take time. And this is what the technology is, what you can make best of, in what you understand. And then you add your own flavor. In 20, 30 years time down the line, many of the things which now is done by knowledge seekers will come open, that they use the technology. By the time now people don't see it, they don't see the benefit of it, or they don't understand it, or they're not using it. But at the end, it's benefiting mankind. And that was the whole purpose of teaching and open sourcing. And it's the same with you. You have to be teaching yourself and open your eyes into the full dimension of the work. Then you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Kesh. We have Marinez as well with the hand up here, and we've got a couple of other questions in the Q&A and other places as well. I guess Marinez had an inadvertent hand up. Paulo has had a question for the last couple of workshops that we haven't gotten in, so perhaps it's a good time now for that. There's a couple of different questions here. Mr. Kesh, was the divine wind that protected Japan from invading Mongols over the sea and Russians over land created by generals and their soldiers by lowering the heartbeat frequency close to Earth's 8 hertz vibration?
I do not know what you're talking about.
I don't know either. Okay, the next question. It is known that the samurai, without the stress of the fights, had the custom to gather the leaders in offering tea, even in the desired field, to have a better future vision of the battle. Could it be that from these tea ceremonies that they developed the ability to lower their frequencies and have these superpowers?
What do you mean?
Again, he's talking about lowering the heartbeat frequency close to the Earth's 8 hertz vibration, I think. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard that before. In the Bible, this final question is, in the Bible, Israeli soldiers pass by with screams tearing down the walls of the besieged city of Jericho. In this case, is it the same phenomenon as the Japanese divine wind, or is it more like the indigenous rain dance?
Do you have any comments? Rick?
I couldn't choose between divine wind and indigenous rain dance. I don't think it would be the same thing. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but perhaps it's more they enter into a state where they're more attuned to the psychic realms, perhaps, and they can maybe see into the past and future more clearly, or have powers like that to have some sort of, I mean, the leaders have used priests and seers and people that can, the prophets that can tell them what to expect and how to deal with situations. So I guess he's talking about.
You see, maybe the small way of explaining it as you do. Maybe what we'll see, you want to change the picture, Rick, on the screen. What we see is that if we create enough energy that we can extend it beyond the boundary, or with the interaction of the other fields, we can extend it. We could create energy fields which can cross walls and God knows materials or gases. This is not a magic, this is understanding how we can increase the field strength or match a field strength that there is no resistance. And did they manage to create that kind of fields through emotional winning, wanting to rule? The way we sweat when we get excited, the way we glow when something happens inside us. And if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 of the same state, would that create, or did they create a condition that they could balance the fields of the wall or whatever, because it's made of brick and mortar? What was that wall built of if it was there? And component of it are within the structure of physicality of the man that he can make the gas of strength of. So nowadays we can explain these things, because it's not that it can be done, is that we have the knowledge, we know how to do it. We know how to expand it and extend it. We We can do a lot of things nowadays. I get a lot of calls, a lot of communication. I had a meeting with somebody in the nuclear industry last night for about an hour and a half. And at the top of and the bottom of the conversations and everything else, and what I get from a lot of you, Mr. Keshe, can you help us with the side effect? Can you help us to stop the effect of whatever with this new plasma situation? Yes, it is. Yes, we can explain why so many people are dying of heart attacks and everything else, and some don't. And what happens to what? These things I can clearly explain. Can you stop the effect of the 5G with what you call the new injection processes? Yes, you can. We have the knowledge. We saw yesterday a couple of communication companies in the US stopped using the launch of their 5G or G5 to run some airports because of the interference. And we saw the first interference with the landing gear. And we watch and we see and we understand the technology. Many of you write to me in many chats, can we stop the whatever is in the new injections? Yes, you can. You have the knowledge. But you haven't understood how to use that knowledge. Inherently, when you are injected with anything to your body, be it vitamins, be it whatever, you create that material. It's the same as I said, when you enter the system. And this is how much of it we understood. I just received a picture from our team in the background. I want to explain something which is fundamentally interesting if you understand it. This is the picture of the flight system put together now in China. There is no reactors built in yet. They're finishing the inside. This now is a matter state system. The guy is standing and it's still a man. Once we put the reactors within these walls, then we create a universal system, a plasmatic system, where the same brain of the man, internal structure, becomes part of the field force. His emotion where to go dictates the position of this system. No scientific organization, no organization in the field of space technology at the edge we are so openly shares knowledge and pictures. Because we are not afraid. We are looking for extension and addition and collaboration. You are knowledge seekers, other governments, other establishments, other scientists. This is what I explained to you. This is now still a house, a room you enter, because we haven't installed the what we call creation of the fields to make it into a plasma. There is a big difference. There is a massive difference between what we call the two conditions. When this system, when this structure is sealed, here you're a man. When I seal it, you are in condition of the plasmatic field there is no rocket propulsion to forward you. It's the interaction of the field of the system. As I said, it creates both fields inside and outside. Inside keeps you intact in the condition of the plasma. Outside interacts with the fields of the planet or any environment to fly. Inside, it creates life, sustains life, maintains life. Outside, protects life from outside or what is inside, but at the same time finds a position in respect to. Go back to understanding of the what we did, and I wish Rick could one day have static pictures of this that we can use it, because it's done a lot of work there. When you put a magnet and you put other magnets, and you put another magnet, and you put series of magnets on the table, you got to understand the field interacts, creates position. But this is interacting with this too. And part of these fields divides to interact the position between this and this and this, and collectively creating a new position. Where this again divides somewhere else into this one, and then plus the field of this. Division of magnetic fields create a condition of magnetic position, and this is what knowledge seekers have not understood up to. Why it takes this position? Because not only interacts, not only the field of these two, there is a fraction of this field as well, which totality dictates. It's the same with this one. Fraction of with this says position of. Fraction of what comes out of here as well dictates the position. It's totality. And then with another, and then with another, and then we'll see that magnetic fields can be divided. Not only we are in the dilemma of can you bend it? We can, with the new knowledge, even divide it. But how do you divide it? That's a skill, that's a knowledge, and it's done every second of life in your body, on planet Earth, in the solar system, and in the galaxy. This is the understanding of technology, of the knowledge of the magnetic fields. And if I put you, as you saw, with a man in a craft and create that plasma condition, I have to bring you here. But at the same time, I have to inform this one you are here too. And then be able to transport you, if you want, to this position. Understanding what I have to gain and what I have to give to maintain the same man. Does not matter where I take him, I deliver him the same. Unless the man's soul decides to go a different way, and the environment changes, and he wants to manifest in the condition of God. I want to go to the man, but still be, I want to go to the moon, but still to be a man. No problem. But conditions around you on the moon, I have to create to maintain you as a man. The freedom to be able to walk without wearing any clothes. Up to now, we sealed you in a clothing. Now, we seal you in an envelope of the fields that gives you that condition to me. We create you the bubble. But by understanding what that bubble needs to provide you for you to be in that condition to look like a man. And what happened if the bubble burst? Would you look still like a man, or would you survive as a man? What do I need to add to bring you back to be seen? You become a quarter of the size you are, or you become 10 times bigger than you are. We need to understand. Once we understand, we can apply. Very soon, we will see the reactors, flight reactors in Arizona, in Tehran, and in Austria. And then we learn more. And then we bring in scientists to create a condition of the fields of the moon or Earth and travel to and come back. But would the knowledge be extended enough by June that the man who will be able to travel as a man to the moon and come back? It's no use getting a man to the moon and just saying, oh, you're on the moon, and then bring him back. You want to let him loose. You want to let him enjoy. You want to let him to understand the creation. When you go to sandy beaches of Miami, you just don't want to sit and fly back out. You want to go on the beach. You want to taste the salty water of the Atlantic. You want to touch the sand and how it feels with that water. There's no good there taking you there and saying, oh, that's it, go back. But to travel this distance in a matter of a day and back, you need to bring a new technology, you need to bring a new understanding. You need to bring a combination of the knowledges together to be able to do it. This is the problem that knowledge seekers have to understand. This is why we are negotiating with NASA. We just don't want a bunch of people who understand propulsion trying to come in and force their way. We want them to understand the new way and see what we can bring in with the landings and everything else, what we have to consider, what machines we have to make, and the rest of it. This is the key to the next step of expanding the knowledge. Understanding the totality that the field has what we call an RNA, an emotion, and understanding that the fields can be divided. This caboodle which we carry, that if we can bend the light, is in reality if we can bend our own understanding, that we bend it ourselves not to see the reality. Now we do. Now we have no choice. We have to expand on it and understand how to do it. And I said, this question came to me at the age of 8 or 9 on the X-ray machine. If that thing can create that thing which goes through me to add to or take from me, I want to be able to do it in a free way. I decide if it's X-ray or gamma ray. I remember when I was just the first years in England, I wrote to my father, you know, this new machine MRI can do more than what you think, and the way it's done is not the right way. He wrote to me, Mehran, you come and build it because I know you think different way and it might work the way you think. Because we use matter state electric current, so we are limited to matter state entity and condition. When we use a plasmatic and maybe use the same system, the same knowledge, the same know-how, we totally achieve different conditions and positions. What happens in our knowledge. What the gap is in our knowledge does not mean doesn't exist. We have to find out how we can create it and bring us to that position of knowledge. I've battled for 30 years, maybe more, to understand gravity, but it was sitting right in front of me because I wasn't ready to analyze it the way it is. I wanted to force partially and mainly the conditions which I was brought up as a scientist and nuclear physicist. When I saw the power in plasma and how you can use the same thing without matter state, game changed. Keshe Foundation now is a scientific structure that depends how much of the science you understand. We share a lot. You maybe understand the agriculture, somebody understands the energy, somebody understands the other part of it. But very, very few of you might understand 2 or 3 of them in the true sense that you can use it. And I'm not there to show this can be done just to become a magician. I learned that from Magrath Blueprint Week. How everything was becoming so ridiculous. You feed us, we take it, and if it is, you're right. If it's not what we understand, there's something wrong with you. No, it's something wrong with you. You haven't understood. You haven't understood the principle of the creation of the Magrath system. The blame is not in the pot maker. The blame is that you don't know how to use the pot. The pot is not for sitting on it, it's for to drink out of it. When you're sitting on it, as I said many, many times, you have to understand the science, not to become a copycat. As long as you say copycats, you stay in the same frame as past thousands of years. Any other question?
Thank you, Mr. Keshe. Azar, I think you're next. Oops, he just disappeared.
Good morning, Mr. Keshe. I'm here. You just you switched my status.
Okay.
I think something happened there.
Okay, I think I'll switch it back to attendee here and just give you the vocal. If that worked.
You need to change your screen, Rick, when you get time.
Okay.
I think we're good to go. Good morning, Mr. Keshe. I just want to ask you the confirmation of this. The way I understand what you explained today, I think Universal Council has a lot of power. It's just like the positioning that we have is sometimes is kind of crooked. The way I can explain it is this, the way I understand it in my mind. You see how sometimes you buy a gadget and then you read the instruction, it says you have to add this piece to this one and this one and this one. And then once you adding to it and you're playing with it and it says at the end of it, a light shows up because I bought a mirror and the mirror was saying, when you connect it, you touch the mirror and the light shows up. And I was playing with it and the light wasn't showing up. And then I was thinking, what's going on? And then, so it was one position that I just have to touch it in, it was very sensitive, one position, it just the light showed up. So just like the way you see with all the positioning, all positioning is kind of crooked. So it means once that position changes, it's going to change everything because it's so much power in there. So another thing I noticed, this also came to me is like through the eyes, we can control the strength of the soul and we can manifest what we want in the palm of a hand. For example, if you take a groundnut seed, in your hand, palm of your hand, and you look at it. You keep looking at it, then it disappears, becomes a light. Then you change your gaze, it becomes a seed. And then I was trying to see what is happening here. Is a seed or is a light? So is a gaze of my eyes through the window of my eyes is a kind of control panel that I can switch and make things become different. So I said, if I can change the gaze of my eyes in different ways, so maybe I can create fire in my hand, or I can create a red rose in my hand, or I can create gold in my hand, because these are all possibilities. It's just how do I, like a control panel, like a dialing panel, you change the strength of the soul to what you want.
I'm going to ask you a question. You're a doctor, you're a dentist. I'm going to ask you a very direct question. And this question I put to many, many religious people. It's the first time I put it in public. You talk about the eyes and you focus over there. Can you tell us why, or some cases, when a man dies, the brown of the eye moves to the top, than being in the center?
That's because that's the place soul lives.
Why does the eye of the man move to the top of the eye cavity when a man dies? And what happened when it's not, or is in different position? Why majority of time the eye moves to the top?
You mean
I'll
the
leave
brown,
it to us.
the brown
I'll
of the eye, the brown
Yeah.
of the eye goes up toward the sky, you mean?
Yeah. Why? Even you're flat, if you're flat on the bed,
Because
you
I'm
should
looking at
look up straight.
I'm looking at God.
You're looking at you. If you're flat on the bed, you should be looking up right in the center of your eyes. But one day I will answer this question. But as you're a dentist, you're a doctor, and you speak about seeing it and visualizing it, maybe some of you knowledge seekers can answer it. But why does it do that?
I need to think about it. I don't have
One
the
day I'll
answer.
give you the answer. One day I'll give you the answer.
Okay.
And in essence, we have to understand what we want to accept, what we want to see. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good day, Mr. Cash. Hello to everyone. Here's Andreas from Austria. At first, I want to thank you for a very enlightening teaching, interesting teaching. And I have a question, if I have understood something right. When we look at the neutron, it's a behavior, it's a giver. And when we look to the sun, for example, it's radiating out and it comes back. And when it's radiating out hydrogens, protons and electrons, they come back again. And on some place, or on every place, they meet again. Like electrons and protons, hydrogens come back to the sun and meet with the hydrogens which go out. And as we know, the ones who come from the outside boundary of the solar system, they have lost their field strength and are weaker. And the ones which come from the sun are stronger. And both are 2 times electron and proton. And now the one proton and electron which comes from the sun is stronger. And it then has the behavior of a neutron, that it wants to balance the electron and proton which comes from the boundary of the universe. And this balancing act is every time in the whole universe different, because the neutron, which has the behavior of an electron and proton, which comes from the sun, has different field strengths. And so on the boundaries, gaseous planets are created, and in the middle, planets with water, and then very much solid planets. And this initial first exchange of field strength from these 2 hydrogens is the origin of the whole creation, what happens after it in all its interactions. Do I have understood that correct?
You lost me in your explanation. I don't understand exactly what you're trying to tell us. Would you like to try again?
Yes. What comes from goes back to. So the sun radiates out hydrogens. They loosen in their field strength and come back from the boundaries of the universe. And on every place in the universe, on different positions, they meet when they come back the hydrogens which are radiated out from the sun. And a hydrogen is a proton and the electron. But when the stronger one, which comes from the sun, interacts with the weaker one, which comes from the boundaries of the universe, it takes the role of the neutron. Because the neutron is just
There
a
are 2
behavior.
things. You touched something which has not been understood, but maybe in reverse, we have explained it in the atmospheric condition of the Earth. Because our physics is so upside down that it baffles me. We're still going on with it. In the present time, with the plasma knowledge, we take the interaction of the fields of the sun and the earth, and this interaction creates a friction between the field forces, which leads to creation of plasmas. And some of these plasmas, through interaction with the field of the earth and getting pulled towards it, create a light, as we see it. And some of its packages are kept or are in the extent that by the interaction of with the inertia of the matter state, create the matter. Yeah? When you speak about the creation of the hydrogen, the present world of science cannot explain it, but now we can explain a different way. The center of if we change this in a way, the same process, but we change it with materials and the change of the fields on the immediate surface of the sun. When now that we understand the science of the plasma and GANs technology, we are adamant, without a shadow of a doubt, the center of the sun is not hot. It could be even at a freezing condition. But as the temperature has nothing to do with the gases and the plasma, it creates a massive interaction of the fields. That this creates a large, a very strong magnetical and gravitational pull. The interaction of these fields with these packages of matter state, what we call could be hydrogen plasma on the surface, the same as it created light here, will create two conditions. The light, or as a field energy, that the interaction becomes light for us, is not a light that will enlighten the whole of the solar system. And partially in this interaction, we create heat because of the density of this layer. And partially, the same history goes on. Packages of fields are created, which are released in the solar system. Everything is not as presumed today in the strength of the magnetic field radiation. This interaction, by law of physics, by understanding the plasma technology, has to, and it indefinitely creates packages of the plasma which are floating on a continuous basis or getting attracted by different processes in the solar system and are in the atmosphere of the solar system. Some of them go beyond. So we don't create hydrogen on the surface of the sun. We create plasma fields of a spectrum of plasma strength. Goes back to wave and particles, fields and photons. What is accepted and understood in one is applicable in all dimensions of the physics, cannot be any other. And the interaction of the strong fields from the plasma in the center of the sun with the plasmas of the lower strength, which created on the surface of the sun, creates the heat. Does not mean that the center of the sun is hot. And this does not mean that only hydrogen is on the surface of the sun. It's a cumulative combination of fields. And what we see has a very strong theory in the background of the centrifuge, in reverse, where you have the center of the sun creating massive gravitational and magnetical fields. In the centrifuge and in the vacuum, the heaviest goes on the boundary, and the lightest goes in the center. That's the theory of the centrifuge. But sun rotates at a lower rotational speed to create full condition of plasma condition and the centrifuge. So what we see primarily is on the surface of the sun yields a strength of hydrogen plasma. Where does the heavy element created go? In world of science, as I just said before, you can't be prejudiced. You have to have answer for everything scientific. Not just because Mr. Keshe says so. It's just because scientifically has to make sense. This is why we are not a cult. Just because somebody says we accept. We are given the freedom of analysis, understanding, and developing. If at this level we see we add to the layers of the earth by attraction, by creation of plasma and conversion to the matter, the same thing should apply to here in a plasmatic condition. But we are in a centrifuge vacuum condition. Why do we get, or we claim to have only hydrogen on the surface? And as you said, because this is the way you understood, the hydrogen travels the span of the universe. This system creates on the surface of the sun particles and fields. It cannot be any other. But particle in the plasma state, fields created from interaction of the plasma states. Two plasmas interact. Scientifically, with what we understand, but what we have in nuclear reactors and plasma technology, we have achieved lift and motion. We have seen creation of gravity. We've seen no heat inside our systems. We deliberately created a system to confirm this. If you go back, I'll show you how we know this, because we just don't accept it because I say so, because this was part of a research when we built this reactor. We wanted to see if the center of the plasma in the reactor has different temperature. And the answer was clearly no. And we found actually in a couple of tests that we were lower in temperature inside. Because, let me see if I can open it, then you understand the physics behind it. That's why we went completely into the plastic, or what we call PVC systems. If I open this for you big enough, and picture can be exposed. This and this picture, if you look, Dean, you're in the center. Can you take a close picture of this and send it to us immediately? I want the brass part of these two systems.
Yeah, I will do, Mr. Keshe. I'll just
Send it to Rick, and the Rick can put it up.
Okay.
When we did this development, we considered if the plasma is heated inside, according to the present knowledge. That knowledge was there 15 years ago. This was built in back end of the what we call 2007-6. And when you look at this brass part, you will see it is in rings.